So, indeed, welcome everybody who is here with us live today. Very, very special moment to share together. And for everybody that will be watching in the future as well, we have a lovely event today that is hosted by the wonderful Mia and Mary. So, I'm going to give a very brief introduction for both of them if you aren't familiar with them already. Mia is an artist, a poet, a mother, and a HR professional, and an early trauma survivor. She has gained health through a regular creative practice, which is something that she's going to be sharing with us today. And she is also the sole admin for some very popular Facebook groups, including Existential Art, Music and Film, which has over 190,000 members, and the Art Collaborative. So if you're interested in that and if you're Facebookly inclined, then please go ahead and have a look at them after we meet today, if that's something that's interesting. And Mary is a disabled and bipolar artist and illustrator. She is battling daily with chronic pain and mental illness. She is also a suicide survivor. And through her battles, art has been her greatest solace and at many times her greatest life force. She is currently preparing her first official solo exhibition titled A Way Out of Loneliness. So it's really honestly, I'm so full of gratitude to have Mary here and to have Mia here. And if it's all right with you, I can hand over to you and we can start the presentation.
Thank you for that, and honored to be here. So, welcome to Creating as a Way to Navigate Fear and Anxiety. This is an interactive workshop. As Natalie shared with you all, there will be opportunity for everybody to create their own art today, so we're excited about that. And I will say it was the fall of last year. I live in the U.S., Mary does, but for folks who are connected with what happened in the U.S. last fall, you would maybe relate to why I'm so excited about and wanted to get into this space. I reached out to Mary and I said, let's share what we do, each of us as artists, to navigate in a world that often does feel scary and full of anxiety. So if you go to the next. So I just wanted to share the kind of plan for today. So I'm going to start out and talk a little bit about creating as a way to make sense about what we feel. And actually the next slide is really going to be, and you can just go, all the way through these bullets and I'll run through them. Next slide's going to actually provide some quotes from some great existential thinkers and kind of ground it in the greater theme that we're part of with the Global Existential Tribe. This to me feels like a very existential activity because it's really around knowing thyself and navigating through seeing things clearly. And when we see things clearly, we have choice. So I'm going to kind of reference that for you. And then Mary and I are going to talk about Saved by Art, which we both use that coin that phrase and use that as a true way to save our being in the world through things. Life is challenging, certainly. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to share with you some of our artwork as examples of this process. And then just some kind of guidelines, some encouragement regarding the art session we're going to have. Then we'll have 20 minutes where we each go and create art ourselves. And then Natalie, this will look familiar because we did this in the other workshop as well. I always feel that when we create art and then we look at it, we name it, it's like bringing it into consciousness, right? And if we can see things, name things, then we have choice about them. So that's a big part of the process. And so then we'll each have a chance to name our artwork and then come back and share. So that's the plan for today.
Perfect.
So you can click again. I think there's a few other quotes that are on this page. Yeah, wonderful. So anybody knows the body knows the score, or body, what is the Bessel van der Kolk's great book? The
Body keeps the score.
Thank you, thank you. It's right in the tip of my tongue, but then when everybody's watching, we forget things occasionally. So this quote is from that book, and he says, people cannot put traumatic events behind until they are able to acknowledge what has happened. Art can help people heal from trauma by acknowledging and processing their experiences. So you'll see as we walk forward, that's part of what we're doing. If we can see it, if we can picture it, if we can name it, then we have choice about it. James Baldwin said the purpose of art is to lay bare the questions which have been hidden by the answers, which I also think is really wonderful, because art is a visual representation rather than just words. And as we know, our executive function in our brain will say a lot of things, but it may or may not truly be tied to what we're feeling in living. So I think that I see art as a bridge. And then Merleau-Ponty says that through art, it is possible to encounter the world in a primordial way prior to the conceptual process of description and explanation. And it is the perceiving, feeling, and acting body which gives access to this world. So I see these quotes interacting with this idea of taking our visceral, like phenomenal, within the idea of phenomenology, how we experience the world, and bringing it into conscious thought and visualization, and then ultimately, of course, having choice about how we show up in the world and who we are and what we choose to do. And then the last quote, I'm not going to read this whole quote because it is kind of long, but it is Viktor Frankl talking about how there is a fruitful tension, right? That there's tension that is not positive for us, in which we feel acted upon, we don't know what's going on. And then there's a fruitful tension as we're figuring out it and we're seeing it, and then we have choice. And he if Man's Search for Meaning and his other works, his focus is not on how are we happy, it's how do we have meaning in what we do, and then be intentional and purposeful in a meaningful life. And this process focuses on that as well. So just to ground it within existentialism, existential, counseling per se, Natalie, good a bit about that. This is a very therapeutic process that we can do, I think, that fits really well with the overall focus of the Global Existential Tribe. Go to the next slide. So specifically, and I just wanted to bullet it out, very plain, direct way, that when I go through this process, it's, I say, and I do this every day, every night, I meet myself and I go, what am I feeling? What am I uncomfortable? What is that thing? And my husband calls it my bloody wad. Inside, there's usually always something that's like, what's that? And that may be just me. I'm not saying that everybody needs to live in the world that way. And then I work with it. And instead of saying, oh, I wish that wasn't there, and running away and trying to hide it or trying to numb myself so that I don't feel it, I try to lean into it and then think, how can I understand what this feeling is and what it tells me about how I want to be in the world and what options are, and then work with a way to make that visible, which is art. And then I create the picture. And in the picture, I then see, and I'm often surprised, which is another interesting thing too, is everybody assumes, oh, you know yourself. Well, at least in my experience of being alive, is that I'm just about as surprising and interesting and mysterious as other people I love and am close to. And when I don't do this work, I end up often with surprises that I don't necessarily love because I wasn't consciously thinking about how I want to be. So that's the steps, like a clear steps, and then seeing and understanding I have choices about how I show up and what I want to emphasize or invest in terms of feelings. So that's the process. We can go to the next slide. I will say as well, if anybody has any questions or call outs, you could put them in the comments. I think that Natalie, you could see those, or you could come off mute and shout out. We welcome that too. And we'll do a lot of that at the end of the session as we share our artwork. Okay. So here we see a few pictures, and this was actually, if you see the second pictures there of Mary and I, we did an art call and response in which we were talking about our essential selves and kind of the houses we live in. And and we have some similar backgrounds regarding, some suffering, some struggling, some trauma, and how art has really been a tool to know ourselves, have choice. And so we coined this phrase, saved by art. And so probably, I don't know how many, 4 years, 3 years, Mary, we've had almost like a call and response.
4 years.
4 years.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been talking a lot. I'm going to pass it to Mary to talk a little bit about, if you want to talk about your process a little bit about Saved by Art, and talk to the slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My process is, I would call it a lot like dreaming or keeping a journal of dreams. Because it's like you said, it's that raw emotion, and for most of my work, I don't plan to do it. Of course, I live a very different life than you and maybe a lot of these people here. I am a hermit, so I have a lot of time on my hands. Although that time gets consumed a lot by pain, so that's a thematic in my work as well. But yeah, it art became almost a necessity for me, because there's nothing else to do once you are disabled, and you lose everything you were. You become this new self, and you have this new reality, and all this time, and yes, art was a way for me to express these truths, these uncomfortable feelings, of either pain or loneliness, which is something I'm going to talk about later, which is a space we enter a lot after trauma, after grief, after loss and disability. But getting to express that in any creative way, it suddenly doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to other people, and your purpose, and I guess your ambition as an artist is for other people to see it and get comforted by it. Because I wasn't just saved by me making art, I was saved by your art as well, Mia, and the poetry we have shared together, or the poetry I have discovered, music, I should say, is a very big savior for me, and an art genre that has a lot of pain in it and a lot of suffering, and it's very interesting place, music. We feel way more comfortable to talk about really uncomfortable things through music, but not to each other with words.
Yeah.
So that's where art comes in, and you're able to talk about really, really uncomfortable things, or really sad things, or really scary things, and I guess, like you said, once you see them and you name them, they become almost friends instead of monsters.
Yeah. Oh, that is so beautiful, Mary, and a theme in some of your art, which you'll see, I think, as well when we walk forward. So we chose these two pictures because it's also a bridge between the inner, often more private world, which you see the bottom two pictures, I think reflective of Mary and myself, And then the outward facing, often smiling, often kind of curated view that most of the external world. And we're very interested in authenticity, in tying the two together. And that's also another existential theme, right? Living us authenticity with authenticity and honesty, we've guarding real experience. Wonderful. I think we can go to the next slide, Natalie. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit of my art, and then Mary will as well. You can go to the next slide. That's beautiful. So here's an example, and I use this one intentionally for this workshop because I want to show that you can do something fast, something even abstract. This one was one that I did in a single evening, so I didn't, do days and days of work on it. And I just came to it, showed up through what the feeling was, and then paused and breathed. And this is what the feeling was, is the words for everything you want to say. So there was so much emotion and so much in me. I was overflowing that the picture had to represent that because I couldn't get all of them, right? And I think another wonderful thing that art does is it, like poetry, like music, is it transcends the concrete. And so you can have in here, this painting could be like sunlight, it could be like fertility, it could be these kind of possibility spaces, but it also could be a black hole, it could be the void. And all those exist in me simultaneously often. And then seeing it, I'm like, oh well, this is truth. And then I can sit in that. Next slide. So here are some other very quick drawings that I did. These are all portraits. I'm drawn to faces. In fact, it's human nature to be drawn to faces. We come into the world in babies. One of the things I think is profound is when nurses go and do that first assessment with infants, they want to see whether or not they're making eye contact, because a healthy baby is going to seek the eye contact with all of the humans in their space, which is kind of gives me chills, right? So yeah, because we come in and we want that mirror neurons, that connection right from as soon as we arrive in the world. That's super profound and important. So often and sometimes I even do it with my eyes closed, is I'm doing like quick portrait, and then I look at it, I'm like, oh, what's that? And then maybe I put in a few more strokes to bring the image forward. And these are a bunch that I did, and you can see like sometimes I'm contemplative and kind of like, what's this? Sometimes I'm feeling definite discordant feelings and this inner disquiet that is often within me, and that's just being honest and authentic with who I am, which has taken me years to grow into, quite honestly. And you see sad and, self-reckoning, because I wish I had done better. That's another theme for me. I look back, oh, I could have shown up in this way or that way. And then unbelieving eyes, I'm looking out the world and saying, that country did what, or those people did what, where's humanity? It's kind of like call out. And like, how can one make sense of this world? I'm sure I was probably seeing something about war or something when I painted that. Anyways, so those are some examples of how I try to pull that forward and do this exercise. Next slide. So this was a very specific one, so it can be really internal, and it can also be an internal response to something external that's profound that's happening. So I don't know how many on this workshop are aware of the big fires that were in California in the US about a month ago. And I have family that lives there. Thank goodness they're all safe and we're not harmed. But I kept reading and seeing about that. And so I did this painting about the burning because I just was profoundly touched by, what does it mean to have your whole life burn, your whole house, all your possessions, everything, and to be standing there helpless like that was something that's a natural disaster. So I did that painting. And there's always the question, right? When you see that, what would it be like? But that's one step away from the reality. Could be you. Like disasters, crazy things could happen for any of us any moment, right? So
yeah.
Wonderful. So Mary, I'm going to pass it to you to share about your artwork.
Okay. Wow. All right. Yes. So this is a painting I did a few months ago, a couple of months ago, I guess. I have a very different process, I guess, from the first drawing you showed, although I do quick drawings as well. But I guess because I have all the time in my life, I do almost a ritualistic process in which I get into the zone of the feeling, I suppose. And what I do is maybe over the course of 2 or 3 days, I painted this while listening over and over again to the same videos about loneliness and the same songs and this was maybe 4 or 5 different paintings before it became this. It's heavily inspired by Mr. Robot, a series by Sam Ismail that I really love, which again, film is another genre, art genre that really helped me in ways. And yeah, to answer back to everything you said, I think, wow, what you said about the babies as well, like we seek a way out of loneliness from our very beginning, a way out of ourselves, right? And it was interesting what you said about the naming as well, because it's so important. It was as well for my bipolar diagnosis and stuff like that, because as you said, you not only you have choice when you name things, you pass it on and you share it and you get feedback from others and you understand that you're not alone, even and when you thought you were. So that's a feeling I really want to talk about and convey with my paintings. I also want to say that loneliness for me is more than a feeling. I think it's a space we enter after either trauma or disability, as I said, or an assault or grief or loss. And sometimes we can have all the support in the world and people loving us, and it still isn't enough. There's that loneliness, there's that we're in that space, and I think it's uncomfortable to talk about because it makes our loved ones sad, and it's it makes people want to comfort us and say positive things to us, and maybe we're not in that space yet to receive that because we need to feel this. And this is another part of my practice where I try to be a little bit revolutionized and say that all the things that we labeled as negative, this anxiety, this fear, this loneliness, grief, maybe they're not negative but necessary, and instincts that we have in order to survive and go on. And I want and the most beautiful of them is the instinct to create and to want to connect with others and to want to find a way out of loneliness.
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
when we're alienated from ourselves, to me, that's loneliness. It's not even so everybody can be around, but when we have trauma, that's always that disassociation is part of the healing process. Yeah.
That's why it's also scattered in the darkness, the figure, because there's just this losing yourself as well. Not exactly losing, but this transformation. Trauma transforms you. And you're someone else now. And you have to discover who that someone else is. And as you said, it can be really mysterious, really surprising. but some places of you can be also really dark and really miserable and sad and maybe futile as well. And we need to talk about these things to each other and find a way to connect through these, instead of hiding them and say, oh, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine. Okay, I guess next slide. That's all I'm gonna say about this. Oh yeah, so these are post-it drawings. I wanted to show that I also do quick stuff, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to do art on paintings and stuff like that. For me, these I could say are way more valuable than the painting I spent 3 days on. These are also like a journal of what I'm going through either that week or that night. I think I drew these in one night when I was staying over at my brother. I think he was away at work and I had nothing to do, so I listened to music and, just created everything like dreams are, an amalgamation of all the stimuli and everything that I am and my feelings. And mostly you will see that it's about carrying this friend who is also your monster, grief. But it's also trying to look outwards. It's about loneliness. But as I said before, it's also about making friends with these demons and these monsters and this loneliness and finding, I guess, like you said, when it becomes a choice, it has a different dynamic, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about these, so I'm not gonna waste any more time because I'm excited to see what people are gonna produce and things like that.
You have one more, right? I think.
I have one more, yes.
Yes.
This one is very special to me. The loneliness came back. This is also, again, inspired by Elliot Alderson from Mr. Robot. He's a character I resonate deeply with. And I actually, for this one, I wanted to read the whole quote, if that's okay with everyone. It says, I want to read it because it's so miserable. But I think every single one of us here has felt that way at least once in their life. It says, the loneliness came back, worse than I remember. I don't get it. I'm the one doing the right thing. You have to see that. Then what is this? Why do I feel this empty void inside? Fuck, I'm really starting to lose it. And it's about these cycles and these waves, grief and trauma and pain and all these things. They come in waves and there's cycles, and I've noticed it in my chronic illness as well. Like, I'll have some very good days and then, there's, or, we could even take it with addiction. Like it's a relapse. The loneliness came back is a relapse where, everything you worked for or thought you were suddenly, for you at least, doesn't make any sense anymore. Nothing brings you joy. And there's just this unfathomable grief. So that's this one. See, I want to apologize for being grim. And I'm here saying that we're supposed to say that we're grim. It's a healthy thing to say it out loud, and to say that sometimes it gets like that, you know, it gets hopeless and you want to give up and you're just tired. And
Yeah. So, you know what's a real irony, Mary, is that all along one of our connections has been authenticity and honesty, and being able to talk about this straight, right? Like in many settings, you're supposed to be good all the time, and you're not supposed to talk about this stuff. That
yeah,
it's that
yeah,
it's
exactly.
you know, frowned on in polite, you know, company. And I just love that you show it. It's authentic, it's real, and it's universal, right? Anybody who says they've not been knocked to their knees at least once in a lifetime is not telling you the whole story, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
and
exactly.
and when we create a painting like that, like people will be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And we're like, "We're freaking rock stars, like what are you talking about?" Because you get it out, right? You see it and then you start to connect, and it's the way out. I mean, it's like saved by
Yeah,
art. So
it's a way out of loneliness. Like this painting for me is a rock star. I'll be honest. I have it on my wall here and I just look at all the little nuances, you know, that I did as brush strokes, and I'm like, damn it, I did that. I fucking did that, but it comes from such a miserable place.
and so it's so funny. We'd laugh about that because people are like, "Ooh, are they okay?" And we're like, "You're amazing! Oh my gosh, you did that!"
Yeah.
So it's a cool
Yeah, like
thing. Yeah.
like your burning painting, like it comes from such a futile, miserable place, but it's so beautiful. It's exquisite. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess art is the outlet to give beauty to the
The full
ugly.
spectrum. Yeah, for the full
Yeah,
spectrum of human
make
existence.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Next slide, Natalie.
Yeah.
So
All
we're gonna
right.
do thank you, Mary. That was so much fun. Gosh, I admire
Thank
you
you. It
so
was my
much.
honor. It was my absolute honor.
I will say too, the Art Collaborative Facebook group was Mary's idea. So we started that at the very, very beginning. I think I've curated it maybe a little bit more, but that kind of came
A
out of
lot
this
more
connection we
than
have.
me. A lot more than me. You're the rock star here. I'm just following, you know, in the flow, just using the flow.
um, so we're going to take 20 minutes and have an opportunity to try this out. Everybody create their own painting. If you want to click through all of the bullets here, Natalie. So we just want to encourage you, right? Mary and I've been doing this for a long time, and everybody, you saw our art looks very different. What I did and what she did, they're not the same, and that's beautiful. There's a full spectrum. So we encourage you just to create without any judgment. See if you can leave that at the door, breathe, lean into what you're feeling, and enter into a flow space if you can. That's really wonderful. There's lots to communicate, whether you have a real form that comes out of it or not, whether it's just color, shapes, lines, or if you do have an image. If you do, in this process specifically, I encourage just kind of like pulling that image forward because it might surprise you, right, in what it says and what it looks like. And then you know, no expectations, and please just welcome the process. And I say that over and over again because it's one that I'm constantly negotiating. There's the critic in my mind very often. It's
Mhm.
like, you can't do that. That's no good. Blah, 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 blah. And, and I try to say, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm doing it anyways. Yes, keep talking. Uh-huh, whatever.
Well, in the beginning, supporting each other really helped us gain that confidence, didn't it? So
Yeah.
I guess it is important, guys, to reach out and find supportive communities because I'm sorry if I'm taking any time.
No, you're
Art
good.
can be a little bit antagonistic as well and competitive. I've seen between people, and I want to
Mm.
break I'm saying like let's get in here, like all of you, and let's just let's just be buddies and support each other and make each other feel valuable because we are. And
Absolutely. Yep. And more creativity, more art in the world, more authenticity, more showing up. Like all that is, you
Yeah.
know, great as far as I'm concerned. More of what we love in the world.
Well, thank you so much, Mary and Mia. Like you say, so many emotions shared, and so many that many of us are sitting with from what you've shared and from obviously what we are as human beings sitting with already. So I'm not going to add to it. I'm not going to waste time. I'm just going to thank you both so much and wish everybody the most, like you said, non-expectation based, truly non-intellectualizing, critically comparing yourself space, but really just being with yourself, being with your art in any way that that looks. So thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll see each other in 20 minutes.
Sounds
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody who's in this
Thank you,
workshop. I look
Mia. Thank you,
forward to seeing what
guys.
you create.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome back. And if you want to go to the next slide, we can talk about the kind of next step in this process. I will say that sometimes this takes bravery. Like it's been a few days where I haven't been able to create, and I was like, okay, I need to create something too. And having that time frame of the 20 minutes helped me to jump into it, right? So I just call that out too. That it helps me to just say you need to do this instead of thinking about it. So after I create a painting, the really the next thing is about naming. And one of the things I want to call out is that we've been naming things forever. Like if you look at all of the creation myths and all the different spaces, if you're interested in like Joseph Campbell or others who've really investigated, naming is really important for humans in terms of
Mhm.
bringing things into focus and into consciousness. Um, to name something is to know something. Just think about the people who are important in your life, right? You can call them by name. And naming brings things into conscious being, which we've already talked about a number of times. Um, to name is to bring into the catalog of known ideas, which is really powerful. And then to name something gives it recognizable meaning. And the one of the things I think is existentially really beautiful about creating, being creative, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's art, is that you are actively engaged in creating meaning. I mean,
Mhm.
it's you can't engage in those spaces without thinking this means something, this means something, this means something. When you put them all together, there's a greater meaning. And so to me, that's always felt deeply existential in a really beautiful way of
Mhm.
defining our own meaning and purpose. So if,
Mhm.
so if we want to go to the next step really is to take what you created. I put this as one of my very, very quick, like splash of experience paintings. I like to use ink, so that's ink, so you get these really intense colors.
Mhm.
And it's also totally abstract because I think that it can have visual, but it doesn't need to, right? So, and now with the power of naming, we're going to have another breakout activity where we each get to name our work today. And then again, just tying it into this existential catalog, this picture. Again, Nietzsche here from the Gay Science says, what is originality? And that is to see something that has no name as yet, and hence cannot be mentioned, although it stares us all in the face. The way
Mhm.
we, and I always put women in when I'm pulling quotes, just my kind of
Mhm.
thing, the way we usually are, it takes a name to make something visible. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's a translation by Walter Kaufman. So now we're
Mhm.
going to take another 10 minutes. Does 10 minutes seem like a good amount of time? It doesn't need to be that long if people feel like they're feeling it already, but we want to just take a moment, quiet, look at our artwork and choose a name. And then we'll move into sharing, which is to me the most exciting, rewarding part of these workshops.